Lab 2 focuses on the difference that material choice makes in the beams. The beams can be made of anything from Rice Krispie treats to Portland cement, wood, or in this case, we've used different kinds of insulation purchased from a hardware store. It's important to cut the beams in the same shape and dimensions so that we're only changing the material, not the shape of the beam. In this case, we've hung weight or mass from the end of the beam. We're making sure that we hold or hang that mass from at the same distance for each beam, and each beam, when tested, will be off of or hanging over the table at about the same distance to make sure that we are really testing the material. Then students can slowly add water and see how much mass this beam will take before it's deflected, and how far of a deflection is acceptable.
So to make the math part of this work, the beam can only deflect a small amount. So we suggest figuring out the load at which the end of the beam deflects about 1 centimeter, maybe 2 at the most. If you get too much curvature, you're going to need calculus instead of algebra. So I can see visually that we've achieved significant deflection with that beam. And actually the students will be adding the water incrementally, and then you can plot the mass of the water added versus the deflection, and the slope of that plot will actually give you the material stiffness number that you need for the beam design equations. So if we were to change this beam out and use the lower density polystyrene, it would deflect much more under the same amount of water. And we've got a good 3 centimeters, 4 centimeters of water in our bottle. So to change our beam samples, we just have to pull the hook through sample number 1 and stab it through sample number 2 at the same distance from the end, which you can have the students pre-mark for consistency. We've added a paint stir stick to try to keep the beams from being crushed by the clamp. That's the only reason to have the stir stick involved. Okay, and you can see how quick this is to do with the bar clamp. It'll work with a C-clamp as well. And again, we want to try to keep the same overhanging length of unsupported beam for all the tests. So that's something that the students will record in their worksheet. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm afraid if I hang this from the white, it may break, but we'll see. Maybe it'll just deflect a lot. No, that's breaking. So you can see there's a real difference between the two materials. And again, this is just straight from the hardware store and cut into bars of the same size.